This is one of those stories I've been sitting on for a really long time. It happened back when I was maybe 25 or 26, way before I met my wife and way before we had kids. I was a completely different person back then. Not in a bad way, just in the sense that I had the kind of free time and risk tolerance that I genuinely can't relate to anymore. I used to do these solo backpacking trips a few times a year, usually somewhere in the Appalachian. I'd drive out to some remote trailhead, hike deep into the backcountry, way off the trail, and spend a few days completely off the grid. No cell service, no other people, nothing. I loved it. My friends thought I was insane, and honestly, I kind of was. This particular trip was in the Cherokee National Forest, and it changed how I see backpacking forever. I had been out there for 2 days, and everything had been going perfectly. The weather had been great, the trail was quiet, and I hadn't seen another person since the first morning. That changed pretty quickly, though. On the afternoon of the second day, I noticed dark storm clouds building up to the west. I wasn't too worried at first. I'd hiked through rain plenty of times, and it was never a big deal. But within about an hour, I realized it wasn't going to be a passing shower. The wind picked up hard, and the temperature dropped fast enough that I actually stopped to put on another layer. By the time the rain started, I was already looking for a spot to hunker down. The problem was that I was in a pretty exposed section of the trail. As I predicted, it wasn't a light rain. It went from windy to a full-on downpour in minutes. The wind was bending smaller trees sideways, and I could hear branches cracking and falling in the canopy above me. I started getting genuinely concerned about my safety. Lightning was striking pretty close by, and I was hiking at elevation with a metal-framed pack on my back. Not ideal. I kept pushing forward, completely soaked at that point. I was scanning the woods on either side of the trail for anything that could pass as shelter. As if by some miracle, I actually saw a structure through the trees off to my left. It was small and dark and partially hidden by the forest, but it was unmistakably man-made. As I got closer, I realized it was a tiny one-story cabin. It looked extremely old, like it could have been a hunting cabin or a homesteader's shelter from decades ago. There was a single window on the side I was approaching. I can't overstate how relieved I was. I practically sprinted over to the thing and pushed the door open. Inside, it was dim but dry. There wasn't much in there, just a chair, a small table, and what looked like a cot frame pushed against the far wall. There was a stone fireplace on the right side that was clogged with old ash and debris. The place honestly smelled really bad, but I didn't care about anything other than stripping out of my soaked clothes and laying down. There wasn't a couch or anything in there, so I literally just picked a spot on the floor and lay down. I was in survival mode at that point, not exploration mode. All I cared about was that I was out of the storm. It wasn't until I'd been inside for maybe 10 or 15 minutes that I started actually looking around. With the storm raging outside, there wasn't much else to do besides flick on a flashlight and snoop. So, that's exactly what I did. There was more stuff in that cabin than I had initially realized. For starters, There was a sleeping bag rolled up in the corner near the cot frame. It didn't look ancient like the rest of the place, which confused me. There were also a couple of cans and water jugs on the table, which made me think someone had been using the place as a base camp of sorts. Maybe another backpacker or a hunter. It wasn't unusual to find stuff like that in remote cabins, but the more I looked around, the more things started bothering me. There were marks on the wall near the door. At first, I thought they were just damage from age or weather, but when I got closer to inspect them, I could see they were scratches. There were dozens of them, some shallow and some deeper. There was no pattern or order to the marks, at least not one I could see. I stepped back and looked at the door itself. The handle was a simple latch, which wasn't unusual. Despite the storm, I opened the door just to get a look at the mechanism. There was a metal bracket on the outside of the frame, which looked like it was designed to hold a padlock. The bracket was on the outside. There was no corresponding latch on the inside. That meant the door could only be locked from the outside. Things only got stranger. I shut the door and started looking around the cabin again. The only thing I hadn't checked out yet was the window, so I walked over to it. The glass was still perfectly intact, which surprised me given the apparent age of the place. But then I noticed why. There were screws drilled into the window frame, one in each corner, securing it shut. Those had also been driven in from outside. And around the edges of the frame on the inside, there were more scratches. Deep ones. These were unmistakable. They honestly looked like someone had tried to pry the window open with their bare hands. All of it hit me at once. Someone had been kept in this cabin. Trapped. As in kept against their will. I should have left right then, and I did consider that, but there was a good part of me that felt like whatever had gone on in that cabin was well in the past. Everything in there looked really old. Even the sleeping bag, which did look newer, was rigid and dusty. Plus, the last thing I wanted to do was go back out in that storm again. So, I stayed. I'm not sure how much time passed. Maybe an hour, maybe more. The storm wasn't letting up at all. If anything, it had gotten worse. The rain on the roof was so loud that it was hard to hear much of anything else. That's probably why it took me so long to notice the other sound. I picked up on scratching or scraping noises from outside somewhere along the left wall of the cabin. At first, I thought it was a branch, but I couldn't remember if there had been branches low enough to even touch the exterior. As I was thinking about it, I heard two heavy thumps on the porch. They didn't sound like storm noises. This time, I stood up. I did that thing where you freeze in place and try to focus by staring at a random spot on the wall. I was trying to listen, but if someone was moving out there, it would have been impossible to hear over the storm. I started getting paranoid that those sounds were just a few of many and that the rest had been drowned out by the rain. My eyes drifted over to the window. I couldn't bring myself to look through it. If someone really was out there, they'd probably be looking through it. I stayed in that position for what felt like forever. After a while, I started to relax a bit, thinking I had just been hearing the storm, or at worst, an animal. I was almost ready to forget about everything when I heard something that sent me over the edge. Pressure on the door. Like someone leaning their full weight against it from the outside. The wood creaked and the latch rattled once before the pressure released. My heart rate instantly shot back up. And that's when something clicked. Why would someone be outside in a storm like this, circling the cabin, tapping on the walls, without just coming in? The door wasn't locked. Nothing was stopping them. And then I thought about what I had found inside. And it occurred to me. Maybe whoever was out there didn't want to come inside. Maybe they wanted me to stay inside. Maybe the whole point was to keep me in there. I don't know if that was the right conclusion or if my mind was just spiraling. But I decided I was leaving right then. I didn't care about the storm anymore. I started throwing things into my backpack as fast as I could. I had this sickening feeling that something really bad was about to happen. And I was right. The next few moments were a blur. I was maybe 30 seconds from walking out the door when I heard the sound of glass shattering behind me. I spun around just in time to see something come through the window, and that was all I could process before the whole room erupted in flames. The fire spread so fast it didn't make sense. 1 second I was standing in a dark room, and the next, the walls were on fire. The heat hit me like a physical wall. I turned and ran for the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was jammed. From the outside. I slammed into it with everything I had, again and again, until finally it gave. The entire door collapsed off its hinges, and I went down with it into the mud outside. I scrambled to my feet and just ran. I couldn't see. Rain, smoke, darkness, I was just running blindly through the woods trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and that cabin. But I didn't make it far. Something hit me from behind hard. I went down instantly, and suddenly there was someone on top of me. I was fighting for my life. I clawed, kicked, screamed, anything I could do to get him off me. He was yelling too, like a complete maniac, trying to get me in a chokehold. He was gouging at my eyes, pulling my hair, trying to overpower me. I started to feel dizzy. But somehow, I managed to push him off. I didn't wait. I got up and ran again. Behind me, I could hear him screaming. I looked back once. I couldn't see him, but I could see the cabin, fully engulfed in flames. The second time I looked back, the fire was smaller in the distance, but still burning through the trees. I just kept running. I didn't stop until my legs gave out. Eventually, I found a spot where two large fallen trees had formed a narrow gap underneath. It blocked most of the rain. I crawled under there and collapsed. I couldn't feel my body. I don't know if it was the fire, the cold rain, or the adrenaline crash, probably all three. Time didn't make sense anymore. I just sat there, barely breathing, trying to stay conscious. Eventually, feeling started to come back. And I realized something simple. Move or die. Whoever had attacked me could still be out there, looking for me. So I forced myself up and started moving again. I didn't know where the trail was. Didn't care. I just kept walking. Somehow, I survived that night. I eventually stumbled onto a trail and followed it until I reached a trailhead. The storm had passed by then. The first person I saw took one look at me and drove me straight to a hospital. I had second-degree burns on my arm and neck. Smoke inhalation. Cuts and bruises everywhere. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. And they meant it. I told the police everything I could. But I could tell. Nothing was going to come from it. Too remote. Too many unknowns. But one thing was clear to me. That fire wasn't an accident. Someone had set that cabin up. Prepared it. Waited. And I had walked right into it. My name is James. This happened maybe 7 or 8 years ago, back when I was in my early 20s. I had this friend, Charles. He was the kind of guy who was always finding places you weren't supposed to be. Abandoned buildings. Factories. Towers. If it was off limits, Charles had probably already been there. Most of our friends thought he was insane. I didn't. I was usually the one who said, "When are we going?" That's how this started. One weekend, Charles texted me about an abandoned fire lookout tower deep in the woods. He said it had been decommissioned years ago. Forgotten. Just sitting out there. Waiting. We planned a trip. 3-hour drive. 4-mile hike off trail. We found it. And it was even more insane than we expected. 70 feet tall. Rusting. Unprotected. No fence. No signs. Just there. We climbed it. Carefully. Some steps were loose. Some were missing. But we made it. The view from the top was unreal. Miles of forest in every direction. We stayed up there as the sun went down. Then it got dark. Really dark. The kind of dark where the forest just disappears. At first, it was peaceful. Then Charles did something stupid. He slammed his metal bottle against the tower. The sound echoed forever. And that's when everything changed. Because a few minutes later, we saw a light. Far below. Moving through the forest. At first, I thought it was another hiker. But it didn't move like one. It was too smooth. Too steady. And then, it got closer. And closer. Until it reached the base of the tower. And stopped. Just sat there. Right below us. We couldn't see who or what was holding it. Charles called out. No response. We waited. Nothing. Just the light. Eventually it disappeared. That was worse. Because now, we had no idea where it went. We went inside the tower. Locked ourselves in. And waited. That's when the noises started. Metallic sounds. Clanging. Grinding. Like something was moving around the structure. Touching it. Testing it. The sounds kept changing position. Like whatever was making them was circling us. Then I saw it. A shape. Moving past the window. Too tall. Too close. I screamed. We both ran to the door and braced it. Hours passed like that. No sleep. Just fear. Waiting. Listening. When morning came, we opened the door. Nothing. No one. We started climbing down. And then we saw it. A section of the stairs was gone. Completely removed. Like someone had taken it apart during the night. Silently. We had to jump the gap. Charles twisted his ankle. But we made it down. And we didn't stop moving until we were out of those woods. We never found out what happened. We never went back. I still go camping. But not like before. And never alone. Because of what happened next. This was about 2 years ago. I was camping alone in a massive forest. 3 nights planned. Everything normal. Until the second night. I woke up to a glow outside my tent. A fire. About 200 yards away. I watched it. No voices. No movement. Just the fire. In the morning, I went to check it out. There was nothing. No ash. No burn marks. Nothing. Like it never existed. That night, I woke up again. To a sound. A tree snapping. Loud. Violent. Then another. From a different direction. 2 massive trees falling in one night. No wind. No storm. Then I heard something else. A low. Continuous. Growl. Not an animal. Not anything I recognized. It went on for nearly a minute. I grabbed my rifle and aimed at the tent. Waiting. Listening. It faded away. But I didn't sleep. At sunrise, I went to find the tree. And I did. But the damage was wrong. It wasn't broken. It was torn apart. Gouged. Like something had ripped into it. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. My stuff. A banana. A carabiner. Items from my pack. Sitting near the tree. Something had been in my camp. Something had gone through my gear. And left. I didn't think. I ran. I packed everything and got out of there as fast as I could. The entire time, I felt like I was being watched. Followed. I made it back to my car and drove. Didn't stop. Called the police. But I knew. They wouldn't find anything. I still don't know what it was. And I don't think I want to.